Did you know that there are actually benefits to negative emotions? Today we'll be talking about sequoias, fire, and how you can use negative emotions to reach your goals. Hi, my name is Nicoletta. I'm your mindset coach, and together we are exploring beautiful places, and I am inviting you to go on the greatest journey you can ever go on, which is the journey within yourself. When you think about negative emotions, you probably think about feeling angry, sad, and when we think about feeling angry, sad, frustrated, we think about feeling stuck. So we don't really have good conversations. They cause us to stall. Sometimes we don't say the things that we want to say because, well, we're feeling too sad, too frustrated, too angry. Or we're saying all the wrong things that cause the conflict to go even bigger and to our detriment often. And when we have negative emotions towards ourselves, usually that means that we're playing small. How does it show up for you? Put that in the chat. When you think about negative emotions, how do they get you stuck? They're usually disempowering. And so the tendency that we have is to say, well, I don't want to feel any more negative emotions. And then we push them away. Whatever we push away, whatever we resist actually persists. Emotions are just emotions. We don't really have any negative emotions. Imagine if every emotion you experienced was just there to provide you a message, to tell you something. It was so important that you experienced that emotion because it was simply there to give you a message. It would already feel different, wouldn't it? If there were no negative, bad, good emotions, if all emotions were simply there to give you a message. Well, here at the Sequoia National Park, we can learn a lot about fire. And fire is sort of like that negative emotion that we experience. We would think that in a forest, you would want to keep fire away. So the sequoia trees are these amazing trees. Maybe you can see some of them behind me. They are 2,000 years old, 2,700 years old, incredibly old, big, majestic trees. If you haven't had a chance to come visit here, it's incredible. It's an incredible experience to see these old trees. And when we think about a tree getting old, we think a lot about how it needs the right nutrients, it needs the right environment. But what you also notice is that there are a lot of trees, sequoia trees, that are damaged by fire. And that seems almost counterintuitive. Like the fire would be bad for the trees. I mean, how can they survive in fire? And that was actually a belief that many years ago that the park rangers here had too. When they wanted to preserve this forest, they decided, probably the best thing would be never, never, never to have another fire. And so they did everything for a long time to have no fires in the forest. Something interesting that they noticed is there were no more fires, but there was also no more growth. The trees stopped growing. There were no more new trees that were being planted, and they couldn't figure out why. What they learned is that the fire is actually an important part of the life cycle of these incredible sequoias. So there's a lot of, branches and debris that lands on the floor. And when the fires happen, they clear out all of the stuff that's just collected on the floors. And when that's collected, that frees up space for something new. And not only does it free up space, but it actually opens up the cones so new seedlings can be planted. And now, because there's this fertile ground, these seedlings have a place to implant and to start growing into new sequoia trees. And the same is true in our lives. Sometimes we avoid, to our detriment, an argument. We avoid, to our detriment often, just like in the forest, we avoid some of the uncomfortable and unpleasant things that are happening in our lives. We don't speak up, we don't have the argument, we don't question everything because we don't want to risk it. And when we do that, we're really eroding and deteriorating our own value. I mean, every time we say we're going to do something and then we don't do it because it's uncomfortable or it feels like it could be an argument, and we avoid it, we're not clearing out the air, we're not clearing out the challenges, we're just staying stuck and we can't grow, just like the sequoias. So here's what you can do so that you can shift and use those negative emotions to something productive so growth can happen. And I already shared in the beginning, there are no negative emotions. We put that label on there because some of the emotions we just don't want to experience. But just imagine that your emotions are like your spice rack. The more emotions that you have and can use, the better it is. Just like the sequoias need the fire to keep growing, we need all of the emotions to keep growing as well. And here are 3 things that you can do when you're feeling a negative emotion. Number 1, label it. Put a label on it. Every emotion means something different. Are you feeling angry? Or are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling sad? Or are you just feeling down? It's so important. Put a label on it. Ask yourself, check in with yourself. What am I really feeling right now? And put a label on it. So you've got something to work with, just like a seasoning. This is salt. This is pepper. Put a label on your emotions. Secondly, ask yourself, what's the value that's being violated? When you can identify the value that's being violated, now you've got something to work with. Now you can have a conversation around that. I'm experiencing this feeling. This is the value. Okay, now I can have a conversation with that person and say, listen, this is what I need so that I feel heard in the relationship. Same is true when you're feeling angry. Ask yourself, are you feeling angry or are you feeling frustrated? There's a difference. And then ask yourself, what's the value? Oh, okay, so this person made a decision without me knowing about it, and that does not feel good to me. Now you can go and have a conversation with that person. Say, listen, when we're making decisions, I want all of us to be part of the decision-making process. And third, do something with it. Don't just identify the feeling and identify the value, but actually make a plan of what you're going to do with it. When we're just in our head, insight is great. It's wonderful. It's a great starting point, but don't stay with insight. It doesn't help you to shift. So if you have an emotion, identify the feeling, identify the value, and then make a plan. What are the steps that you're going to do? Because this is so important. It's great that we can explain something, but when we can just explain something, it doesn't cause us to take any new action. So thirdly, always ask yourself, okay, so now I know this, what needs to happen next? Do I need to have that uncomfortable conversation? Do I need to get somebody to help me have an uncomfortable situation? Like, what's that thing that you need to do so that you don't have to experience that emotion anymore? And when you tap into the range of emotions that you have and you use them, you can use any of your emotions. So where's an area in your life where right now you're thinking, there are negative emotions, and you don't want to sit with those negative emotions? Maybe it's time to turn that difficult emotion into something positive so that you can continue growing. I'd love to hear your experience with negative emotions in the chat below. With that, trust yourself, trust the journey, and see you next time.